Thank you for tuning in to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Whether you're listening during your commute, while working out, or just relaxing at home, we appreciate you. Every download, every listen, and every subscription means a lot. Up next, the 12 Kyle podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. Man, check this out. On this episode, what we're going to talk about is being spoiled. I was searching the internet the other day and I came across this article and I found it to be very intriguing, as I am, as many of you know, a father. I'm a father of four. My wife and I have four children. Our oldest son, Dion, is 25 at the time of this recording. Our middle son, Cameron, is 22. Our youngest son, Brandon, is 18. And our baby girl, our daughter, Skylar, is 13. So we have four children. We have four because we don't want five, right? And so in reading the article, I just started thinking about, have we spoiled these children? And it kind of made me reflect about my childhood and whether or not I was spoiled or not either. So I have a general question. Were you spoiled as a child? Were you A, somewhat spoiled, B, spoiled, C, not spoiled at all, or D, spoiled rotten? Because here's the thing. I think all of us fall into one of those categories. I generally do. But I think it's very important that parents also understand where they were as children and then where you are as a parent. Now, not everybody that's listening to this podcast is a parent, but we all have had, or we've been parented either by our parents, step parents, grandparents, guardians, aunts, uncles. Somebody was an authority figure over all of us who are listening. So we're all going to fall in those categories. So it got me to thinking, what defines being spoiled? Is it just being able to get what you want? Or is it giving in excess to a child? And it could be somewhere in the middle. Full disclosure, I don't think I was spoiled as a child. I think my brother and I, we grew up in Florence, South Carolina. We were the typical lower middle class family. Here's the thing. We had everything that we wanted. And I take that back. We had everything that we needed. And it seemed to me like, looking back on it, I can't really recall wanting something that I couldn't get. Now, I do remember asking my mom different times, asking her for stuff. And she said, well, hey, I don't have any money. And it's kind of weird concept, because your mom might say, I don't have any money, but you see her go to the grocery store and spend money. Like, wait a minute, you just said you didn't have any money. I thought, and then the old adage for a lot of us growing up in the 80s and the 90s, do you think money grows on trees? It wasn't until I got to be a little bit older in life where I realized that money truly does not grow on trees. I wish it did, because if it did, I'd have a money tree in my backyard, and my front yard. But, I honestly speaking, I don't think we were spoiled. I think my parents were together until I was almost 14. And so I would say that they provided very well. We weren't wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. Financially, I would say that the life that I've led as an adult for my kids is far beyond the life that me and my brother led with our parents, as far as income is concerned. I'll be honest. I make a couple of dollars, and those dollars are a lot more than the dollars that my parents made. I'll just put it like that without disclosing my business. But and that's cool. But it made me think, have we spoiled these kids? And where in that same scenario are my kids somewhat spoiled? Are they spoiled? Are they not spoiled at all? Or are they spoiled rotten? So it got me to thinking, okay, the first question, do you spoil your kids? And again, it made me look within, because I think in the efforts of providing for them, I think they are spoiled. I wouldn't say that my kids are. They're not spoiled rotten, that's for sure. And they're not spoiled at all. I mean, like, they have everything that they need. They have everything that they want, and then they get excess of stuff. And for some reason, I don't know why, but my kids seem to think like I don't know, Rockefeller, somebody. Like they think I'm Bill Gates, man. I'm like, hey man, I work. Like I ain't broke, but like there's no money trees in the backyard. You can go look and check. I just checked like 10 minutes ago before I started recording. I didn't see one, right? And so like I will provide for my kids. And what's interesting is that I think what happened to me as a father, particularly when I became a father for the first time, my spending habits changed because like wherein it would be about what I wanted to buy and what I wanted. And so if I went into a store and I saw some Air Jordans that I like, I just buy them, right? You know, and I wouldn't think nothing of, okay, here you go. But when I became a father, it was like, okay, I'm going to buy a pair. Let me also buy Dion a pair. and then it became, okay, let me buy a pair and let me buy Dion a pair and let me buy Sharice a pair. And so like that became the thing, but I don't think that's necessarily spoiling. You just, you're providing, but you do a little bit more, right? So to answer the question, do I spoil my kids? I think they're somewhat spoiled. I don't think they're spoiled. Well, I think it fluctuates. I think it fluctuates between being spoiled and somewhat spoiled. If you ask them, the four of them, individually or collectively, they'll probably tell you that they're not spoiled, but and they'll probably tell you that we're strict. I don't think I'm strict at all. I really don't. Like to hear, especially as my kids have gotten older. They say that. They say, "Oh, Dad, you're so strict." The answer's always no. I'm like, the answer's never no. But here's the thing: when you come to me, and I got this from my uncle. Shout out to my uncle. When you come to me with something, and it's of something that you want. My thing is it a want or is it a need? So you kind of got to balance the two. So, okay, yeah, you saw this purse that you like. Is it a want? Or is it a need? Do you need a new purse? If you need a new purse, okay, cool. We rocking like that, right? We'll go to the store and get one. But if it's, if it's something that, if you've got 17 purses, do you really need an 18th purse? I mean, I'm just asking the question. And I'm not talking about my kids. I'm talking about my wife at this point, because it's like, even in our closet, I could go look in the closet and like, there's over 150 something pairs of shoes just for 2 feet, and they're not mine, right? So, but that's beside the point. But so to answer the question, do I spoil my kids? I would say so. Again, now, and what's interesting, I wish I had gotten them on this podcast because I'm very interested to hear the answers. Maybe I may text them today and say, hey, do you think you guys are spoiled, somewhat spoiled, not spoiled at all, or spoiled rotten? I'm interested, and here's the thing. I'm willing to bet if I text them individually, I may get 4 different answers because my sons are automatically going to say, well, we're not spoiled, but Skylar is. And Skylar is the baby. She's also the only girl. And she's the youngest. So, there's a tendency with parents to, kind of spoil the daughter, I guess. I don't know. She's the only daughter I have. We're not having any more kids. So this is what we got. So, but I don't think I'm spoiling her. Not like that. So the article talks about 5 signs that you're raising a spoiled child. So parents, if you're concerned that you're raising a spoiled child, here's a checklist of quote unquote red flags to look out for. Number 1, not taking no for an answer. Your kids expect to get things their way, and it usually goes their way. In fact, they're constantly telling you no. Yeah, see, now that ain't gonna happen in my house. Because how I was raised by my parents and still being raised by my parents who are, elderly now, but they're in their mid 70s, but and they still are raising me, if you will, at 52 years old at the time of this recording. You can't. My parents would say, when they say no, that's it. I mean, like it's no, and it's hard stop. Like there's nothing else to talk about. Dad, can I get this? No. Well, I mean, I really didn't ask my dad for a lot of stuff, because I knew he was always broke. But Mom, can I get this? No. Okay. Like that was it. So, but no, if my kid, there will never be a day when my kids ask for something and I say no, and then they tell me no. Nah. If that's the case, you better get it yourself, because that means I ain't getting it. Number 2, being more into receiving than giving. No matter what you do, it's not enough, and the spoiled kids just want more. Again, that ain't gonna happen in my house. Because listen, if it's Christmas, what you got is what you got. You ain't getting nothing else. Now, full disclosure, I can only think of one time in their lives where Christmas was like really, really thin. And I mean, it was so long ago. And I think at this particular time, it was just Dion and Cameron. So it wasn't even like we had Brandon and Skylar. Like it was that far ago. And and they were young. So Dion and Cameron are 3 years apart. So it wasn't even like that. So I'm like, nah. And to be honest, that Christmas was thin and they didn't even notice. I mean, because they were so young. But no, there'll never be a point where you give them something, they're like, all right, that's cool. What else? No, that's not going to happen in my house. It's just not. Number 3, demanding things ASAP. This is when they don't consider people to be inconvenienced by their requests and expect you to set your getting tongue tied. Sorry. They expect you to set your priorities to the side to cater to them. Listen, as sure as my name is 12 Kyle, that will never happen. You can't demand anything from me. Nobody. Nobody demands nothing from me. I demand everything from myself, and that's it. I'm the only person that can give demands at this point. Now, full disclosure, there's nobody in my life, my wife, my mom, nobody that demands anything of me, but other than what I'm supposed to deliver. But no, there'll be no demanding from people that lay their heads up under my roof and don't pay the mortgage. Number 4, only thinking about themselves. They feel entitled and expect special favors. I have a huge problem with the word entitlement, because you're not entitled to nothing. In fact, I have a podcast coming up talking about that. You're not entitled to nothing. My kids will always say, well, Dad, that's not fair. Dad, this is not fair. You know what my response always is? Life ain't fair. Ain't nothing fair. You got everything that you get. You have to earn it. Like, nobody's going to give you anything. And I tell my kids that all the time. Outside of these 4 walls, there's nobody that's going to give you anything, because nobody owes you anything. What you work for is what you get. What you kill is what you eat. Nothing's just going to fall out of the sky for you. And if it does, then let me know, because I want some of that. Number 5, never satisfied with what they have. They're used to having all the toys in the world, but it's never enough. They always want more. I can honestly say that never happened in my house. Our kids growing up always had a lot of toys. But it's just like anything else with a child. Like, that a child's going to play with the toy for a little while and then they'll move on to something else. I always laugh when I think about the kids when they were much younger. 'Cause like, I remember Cameron distinctively, like Cameron would, when he was a toddler, he would just be satisfied if he could sit on the kitchen floor and pull pots out of the drawers and bang on the pots. He loved the sound of that. It's a wonder that the boy didn't become a drummer. But yeah, I mean, like they were satisfied with minimal things like that. And so it didn't make a lot of sense to buy them a whole bunch of toys. Because here's the thing. When you buy a child a bunch of toys, they're going to play with the toys, and then after a while they get tired of the toys, so they move to something else. Now, this generation of kids, they don't really play with toys like that because everything's electronic, right? So, but if you got an iPad, if you have a MacBook, if you have an iPhone, I mean, like, there's your toys right there. and you got a PS5. I mean, bro, that's pretty much it. Do you need anything else? I mean, are you really going to play with G.I. Joe with the Kung Fu grip? No, you're not. You're not going to play with action figures. You're not going to, play with your dollhouse and everything like that because everything's on this computer screen for you. But you should be satisfied with the toys that you have, particularly, at the time of this recording, we're just coming off Christmas. Be satisfied with the stuff that was under the tree because guess what? It didn't have to be. And there was no chubby white man that delivered those gifts. It was me. And I ain't sliding down no chimney, Jack. So it's interesting when you think about the dynamics of spoiling a child. Now, on the flip side, people have to ask, and they also mentioned this in the article, can you unspoil a child? But right now we're up against it's time for a commercial break. On the other side of the break, I'll tell you about how you can unspoil a child. Sit tight. We'll be back with the 12 Kyle podcast in just a second. Are you feeling nostalgic for the golden eras of rap and soul music? If so, tune in to the Rap Soul podcast. We are your weekly journey through the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, spotlighting the music and the hidden gems that shape the soundtrack of our lives. From the powerful beats to the soulful melodies, we bring you the best of the past with fresh insights and stories. Rediscover the music that defined a generation. Subscribe to the Rap Soul podcast and enjoy the vibes. If you want a podcast where culture, conversation, and life collide, where you get insightful commentary, engaging discussions, and a fresh perspective on everything, then you need to listen to the 12 Kyle podcast. Hosted by the one and only, yours truly, 12 Kyle, a voice that you know and trust. This podcast will bring you thought-provoking moments, compelling stories, and a whole lot of fun. Whether you're a first-time listener or just tuning in, each episode promises to be something new and exciting. So sit back, relax, join 12 Kyle, myself, and my guests as we break down the world around us and give you stories that you've never heard before, from nostalgic throwbacks to everything in between. The 12 Kyle podcast is a front row seat to this conversation. Subscribe now and never miss an episode of the 12 Kyle podcast, where the vibe is always real and the discussion is always worth your time. And just like that, we are back. Once again, it's your boy 12 Kyle. This is the 12 Kyle podcast, and we're talking about being spoiled. Before the break, I gave you 5 signs that you're raising a spoiled child. 1, if they're not taking no for an answer. 2, being more into receiving than giving. 3, demanding things ASAP. 4, only thinking about themselves. And 5, never being satisfied with what they have. And I told you before the break, I was going to tell you about unspoiling a child. The article talks about in ways that you can unspoil a child. I mean, I have the simplest way: cut that shit off. There's a pipeline going from your pocket and the things that you do and you provide for your child. Cut the pipeline off. I think that's pretty simple, but the article doesn't suggest it, at least in those ways. So here's a couple of things that they suggest. 1, saying no without guilt. Parents often believe that saying no decreases self-esteem, but research shows that kids who are raised with structure and less permissive parents have higher self-worth and feel more empathy towards others. When you say no, give a short reason as to help them understand why you said no. I think that's okay. I don't think you should ever feel guilty about saying no. I mean, like, there's a reason why you say no. I mean, the thing that I try to tell my kids all the time, like, there's a reason behind everything. Sometimes they don't necessarily see the reason. Sometimes they don't necessarily understand the reasons. But sometimes you just got to say no. Like, I'll give you an example. Our youngest son, Brandon, he asked me the other day, he was like, "Hey, Dad, is it okay if I go to my girlfriend's house?" And he had just been over at his girlfriend's house the day before, and he was there all day long. I mean, like, literally from like 12 to like 9 o'clock, which was cool because it was the weekend, right? But the flip side of it is that, like, if you spend all day Saturday at somebody's house, then now you're talking about coming back the next day and spending a couple more hours. I mean, like, I'm thinking as a parent, her parents got to be like, man, this dude back over here again. like, but I also understand too that, they're dating, they don't go to the same school, so they see each other on the weekends or whatever. But, I'm also like the old school parent wherein you ever heard the saying, like, you don't want to wear out your welcome. You could easily wear out your welcome with those people because, like, they could get tired of seeing you, like, and it'd be different if you just came by for an hour or two. But I mean, like, I'm talking all day long. They're sitting there watching movies, they're laughing, playing games, video games. And it's, it's all fun and games and stuff. And I get it. But, I told him no. I was like, no, man, just chill. I was like, no, you can't go over there. And he was like, well, why, Dad? And I was like, and now he said, why? That's the difference between my parents, his grandparents, and me. Because we've allowed our children we've given them some leeway to have discussions with us about things, about everything. Wherein both Sharice and I came up in households where it was the old adage of a child is meant to be seen and not heard. Meaning, if your mom said something, that was it. Like, or your grandma said something, that was it. There was no, well, hey, can I do this or can I do that? If they said no, that was it. There was no other conversation left to be had. And so we do give them the space to have open communication with it. Doesn't mean that that's going to change. So when he said why, we had a discussion about it. So that was cool. But, and I was able to explain, because see, here's the thing. You want to be able to explain your no's, right? Particularly when you're talking about potentially spoiling a child. You want to be able to explain why you said no, because there's a reason behind the no. And my reasoning was what I just explained to you guys. Like, I don't want you to wear out your welcome. Those people just saw you all day yesterday. You're not going to be over there again today all day. No, it's not going to happen. And I get why you would want to spend time with your girlfriend. I mean, that's your girlfriend. But at the same time, let's have a little common sense here. And at his age, and especially not having, lived life just yet, before he goes off to college, like, he has to understand those things. And those are things that we're trying to instill upon him. So that's one thing. Number two, boost gratitude. That's another way that you can unspoil your child. Practicing gratitude helps children feel happier, cope better with adversity, and it also increases their life satisfaction. I think that's true. You have to be grateful for things. Like, I think I became way more grateful for the lessons that I was given after I got out of the house. Like, I left home to go to college at South Carolina State University after my senior year of high school. And I never, after my senior year of high school, I never went back. I mean, I went back, for holidays and stuff like that, but I never lived under my mother's roof again. Like, when I finished college, I moved here to Atlanta. And so I haven't lived under my mother's roof since 1991 when I graduated from high school. But I became more gracious and more appreciative of the lessons that I was taught. And I tell people this all the time, and I tell my kids this all the time, like, my mom, my dad, my aunts, my uncles, they became geniuses when I got to college. And it's not like they weren't smart people before, but all of the lessons that they gave me along the way, I was able to appreciate once I got away from them. And the same will happen for them. And the same is happening now, especially with our older two who are in college. And so now you become more gracious. You have more gratitude for the lessons that you've been given. And you also become more gracious for and have a level of gratitude for the things that you have. I mean, like, it's one thing to have something, and it's also something to lose that thing. So, it's one thing to have a car and be appreciative of a car, but you really sometimes don't appreciate the car, particularly as a child. If your parents give you a car, You don't appreciate the car until you don't have the car anymore. The car is not working, or God forbid, the car crashes. You know, that happens. And so, like, you want to appreciate everything that you get, because you got to understand that more often than not, your parents are working vigorously, endlessly, to make a better life for yourselves. Just on a personal note, we've made a commitment to, from the day that we became, even before we became parents, we made a commitment to, give our kids the best of everything. But in doing that, also give them discipline and the knowledge of the fact that, it doesn't come from the sky. Like, we've worked hard to be where we are, and we want to reap the benefits. We want you to reap the benefits, but we also want you to appreciate it. And that's a very hard line, and a very a weird line to draw. And sometimes that line gets blurred because your kids don't really appreciate, what you put into them until either they move away from you, or sometimes until they become parents themselves. And there's an inner struggle here, and it was a struggle that I think I can only speak for myself. The young black men of my generation, it's a struggle that I've seen myself go through, as well as my friends go through when we became fathers. In that, how can you teach your child to appreciate not having when they've had everything? Like, I talk to my kids all the time about, like, where I went to high school at. Where I went to high school, Wilson High School in Florence, South Carolina. Great school, great high school. I loved my 4 years there. But the reality is that I came from a middle-class background. By the time my parents split and we moved on the other side of town, I was in a bigger house, and we had a driveway and a pool, and we played basketball. It was suburbia on steroids, right? And everybody on our street, successful, nice house and stuff like that. And people literally could walk out and leave their house unlocked, and like nobody would, go in the house. You wouldn't have to worry about anything like that. But I went to school with kids who they didn't know if they were the only time they knew that they were going to eat was when they arrived at school. They knew they were going to eat breakfast at school, and they knew they were going to eat lunch at school. And they may not eat again until they go back to school. Like, I went to school with kids like that, kids who, came up in much, much rougher circumstances than I did. But that being said, like, I was able to see that and have a certain level of appreciation for it. But if you have, and then everybody around you has, when do you get to the point where you appreciate not having? Because you've always had. And so there's an inner struggle there between showing your kids, what they have is important, but also making them understand that it's not, you can't take it for granted. Like, somebody had to work to get here. Like, I tell my sons all the time, like, y'all never saw me shooting in the gym. And I don't mean literally or physically, but like, they did not see my struggles. And I had struggles, but they weren't supposed to, right? And I positioned myself and worked myself to the point where, life was supposed to be better for them than it was for me. And I think should be how generations move. I've led a much different life than my parents did. My mom grew up in the segregated South. My dad grew up in the North. And, they had me in 72, and they worked and worked and worked. And, the marriage didn't work, but, they tried to do what they could to provide a life for me and my brother. Like I said, we had a great childhood. You guys hear me talk about my childhood all the time. But, my kids can never get on any type of platform and say like they struggled or they got it out the mud, because they didn't. Now, there's no silver spoons around here, I'll be honest. But like, no, there's nobody in our neighborhood doing a drive-by. They go to schools with kids who are much like them, come from two-parent households. The high schools, my sons have all gone to the same high school, but I mean, like, it's a high school that has like 98% of the kids go to college on scholarship, and it's a black school. I mean, and I'm not crazy enough not to think that doesn't happen everywhere. It didn't happen for me at Wilson. So, you position yourself to put your children in successful, situations and watch them grow from there. And so like, we stress the importance, or at least what we think is important as far as education is concerned. But it's also about what you do with that paper. I tell people all the time, like, I have a college degree. My wife has 2 degrees. She's now working on her doctorate. But if you walk in my house, you will not see our diplomas or our degrees anywhere. And I don't, and it wasn't until I did an episode about it, like, I didn't even think about it, but like, I know that my degree is in this house. In fact, it's in this door, it's in this closet right here, where I'm pointing to. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you for watching, but you can't see it off camera. But yeah, it's in this closet, but no, it's there. I'm proud of it. You know that I did graduate, but there's nothing hanging on the walls except jerseys. And I wasn't even the type of player who had a jersey retired. So that's just there for my benefit. I think it looks dope. But yeah, you want to get your kids to get to a point where they can appreciate your struggle, but it's kind of hard to get them to appreciate your struggle when they weren't around for your struggle. Like, and I'll also use my marriage as an example. I often wonder, like, what my kids see and what their image of marriage is, because I know I had a certain image of marriage or what it looked like when I was a kid, but they've always seen their parents together. We are we are Martin and Gina. We are Cliff and Claire. We have a good time. We're the best of friends. We love each other, obviously. And, but we get into it, we don't get into it like we fighting in here, but I mean, like, they've heard us argue. We try not to argue in front of them, but and we will disagree on things, and we're not going to see eye to eye because, we've been together. It's been 30 years we've been together. We've been married for this year will be 25 years in September. So, no, but I mean, like, I know that they, especially as they get older, they find, people that they think that they may want to settle down with. They're basing it off of what they've seen growing up. And, but I also want, if they get, or should they get to that point, for them to get married and then subsequently have children, I want them to work as hard, because my future grandkids should have a better life than their parents did. And it's not just so much about material possessions, but it's about generational and breaking generational curses. And, but I also tell them, like, no, like, you didn't see us struggle as a couple. You didn't see us struggle as 2 broke college kids, because that's when we met in college. So you didn't see us. You didn't see my apartment when I had the TV sitting on top of the trunk. I didn't have no entertainment center until, like, I didn't have an entertainment center, I think, until, like, I moved into this house. No, at the old apartment. So I'm talking, like, maybe that was 2000. So yeah, it's been almost 25 years since I started having an entertainment center. And again, these are material possessions, but the kids didn't see that. And so it's kind of hard when you try to make them understand that there was a process. There was a struggle. There was days. There were some dark days. There were some dark times. But you keep pushing and you keep fighting through, because one of the things that I learned at South Carolina State University is that, you always will find a way. You have to. Like, there's no sitting down, whining about it. It always goes back to the question, what are you going to do about it? Like, times get tough. Okay, you got to get tougher. You have no other choice. Like, there's no copping out. There's no bowing out. You just have to get tougher. Point 3, and this is the last point. It says stretch waiting. Research shows that being able to pause, wait, and delay is highly correlated to future academic and financial success. Patience is a virtue after all. I think, yeah, if you make a kid's wait, but if you, in making them wait, you also have to make them earn it, right? I'm never going to reward my kids for having bad grades or piss poor behavior or them acting a fool at the schoolhouse. No, that's not going to happen. I mean, I ain't cut from that cloth. You'll get rewarded for your hard work. It's funny because we were having dinner one night and we were, all of us, 6 of us were at the table, and and I really and truly, particularly since the older 2 are in college, and we don't get to see them as much, I really appreciate the times that we're able to sit down together as a family and break bread. And we have some of the greatest conversations. And, they were just talking about, how their lives are. And it's just funny just hearing them talk about us as, and the things that we've done as parents, and not in a mean way, but they're just expressing themselves. But one of the things I tell them, like, it's going to take time. Patience is going to take time. Nothing happens overnight. Your dedication to your craft or whatever it is that you do will pay off, but you have to work. Like, it's not going to be given to you. And one of the things that I keep reiterating to them, like, everything that you want is going to be it's going to be a struggle involved, right? But hard work pays off. You won't get it, and it won't be. What I tell them, I always tell them, if it wasn't hard, everybody would do it. I say that all the time. They'll be like, "Well, Dad, this is difficult." Okay, well, it's supposed to be. Okay, like our oldest son, Dion, is getting his master's degree right now. And I'm like, yeah, getting a master's degree is not easy. It ain't supposed to be, but this is something that you want to do. It's going to pay off for you in the long run. Getting my bachelor's degree was extremely difficult. I got to have a podcast about some of my struggles in college were self-imposed, especially for the classes that I did not like. Yeah, I'll do a podcast episode on that. But at the end result, like, I earned that degree. And up until that time, December 14th was the greatest day of my life. December 14th, 1996. I remember that day like it was yesterday. That was the day that I earned my degree in marketing from South Carolina State University. And only a select few knew what I had to go through to get to that degree. I mean, it was blood, sweat, and tears, and a lot of jokes in between. But the thing I tell my kids is, like, it's okay. It's your reward is going to come. Nothing is going to come easy. But yeah, being able to unspoil your kids is, pause and delay and rewarding them for what they've done, after they've earned it. If you don't earn it, you're not going to get it. Like, I know people, who, really kind of dogged it in school, and they might get a new car or they might get new gear. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're being rewarded for not the stuff that you're supposed to be doing. Like, you can't get an F and get a new car. You can't get an F and get a new iPhone. Like, that just doesn't happen. But, we were sitting at the table, and the joke was that Skylar is going to have we're going to buy her a car before she goes to college. And while I laughed at the joke, I mean, if things continue to trend in the direction that they are, she probably will, because she, at least to this point, has been the most effective, academically, and she'll probably, because she's a whiz, right, as far as school is concerned. So she'll probably graduate in the top of her class. She'll probably have, a full ride to college. So if I don't have to pay for your college, why not get you a car, especially if you're responsible? But I mean, we've got a few years before that happens. But is that spoiling her? No, that's rewarding her for what work that she put in. And she's really down to put in the work. She's always been, school is, I'm not gonna say it's been easy, but it appears to be relatively easy for her. But I mean, and time will tell. But ultimately, in conclusion, I think it's important that, if you do spoil your child, that you also give them reasons not to be spoiled. You also try to unspoil them, because, like, I get it. There's a premise that we want our children to have the physical possessions of everything that we didn't have as kids. I know personally, like, I buy a lot of Air Jordans because I couldn't afford Air Jordans when I was a kid. And so, like, I buy a lot of the retro Jordans that, I couldn't afford as a kid growing up. And I asked my mom, and she say no. And she said, well, hey, let's, these Jordans cost $125. I see some Adidas over here for $55. Like, no, I don't want to wear no Adidas. And then it's like, okay, then this struggle back and forth. So, but I mean, I wasn't going to school with raggedy shoes, but no, the idea of getting 2 or 3 pairs shoes for school when school started, hell no. You was going to get 1 pair, dog. That was it. But in conclusion, like I said, it's really about, if you have a spoiled child, just letting them understand that you as a parent, you're working hard to provide for them. You just want them to appreciate it, and just helping them understand that, again, money doesn't grow on trees, because if money did grow on trees, we'd all have a bunch of trees in our yard. And unfortunately, we don't. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. This has been another edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. You can find the podcast wherever you get your podcast. This episode drops every Thursday and every Sunday at midnight when we drop bonus episodes. If you're on YouTube, check us out on YouTube. Thank you for watching on YouTube. We appreciate it. You can like, download, subscribe there. Hit the notification button. That way you get notified when we drop episodes on YouTube. If you're on social media, hit us up at 12 Kyle on Twitter X, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. We're there as well. If you'd like to contribute to the podcast financially, you can hit us up on Cash App, $TWELVEKYLE. Also, we have merch. If you look in the description box, there's a merch link. Just click that link. You can buy 12 Kyle podcast t-shirts, hoodies, as well as coffee mugs. We got it for the low. And we also have a new baby. It is called the Rap Soul Podcast. It is a place where we have the discussions of the intersection of rap, soul, hip hop, and R&B music from the 80s, 90s, and the 2000s. It is the best podcast you've never heard of, so check it out. We drop new episodes every Monday at midnight. You can find the podcast wherever you're listening to this one at right now. Again, that's going to do it for me. This has been another edition of the 12 Kyle podcast, talking about these spoiled kids. I'm your boy, 12 Kyle. We'll catch you guys next time. 5,000. Cheer.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of the 12 Kyle podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and share this podcast with a friend who needs the 12 Kyle podcast in their life. Every listen, every download, and every share helps us grow. Thanks for being a part of the 12 Kyle podcast community. We appreciate your support. We will catch you next time. 5,000.